Well, thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and to Anne-Marie for all the kind words, which we heard some of from outside. And Anne-Marie used the term "we," and you've got to ask, who are we? Not just we, not just us, but we in the widest sense of the word. We're neighbours, we're friends, we're brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, partners, sons, daughters. We're all of us, and we're better together. Now, we're at our second conference. We stand together, joined by our ideals, strengthened by our friendships, and emboldened by our common goal of building a fairer Ireland. The growth of our party over the past 2 years has been extremely encouraging, and we're hugely grateful to the enormous effort that's put in by yourselves and our colleagues across the country on a daily basis to grow the party and to spread the message that a fairer and more decent Ireland is possible.
So whether in housing, tackling corruption, repeal, or in our campaigning for the implementation of Sláinte Care, we are steadily growing as a nationwide movement. Just as I stand shoulder to shoulder with Catherine, together we stand with you, whether you're a party candidate, a constituency worker, an ordinary member, or simply a citizen of this country. As co-leaders of the Social Democrats, we affirm our commitment to you that the full strength and resolve of our great party stands squarely, shoulder to shoulder with all of you. Together, we as Social Democrats can and we will deliver real change. Because we are about much more than just working to try to live. Social Democrats and social democracy is about a good quality of life where people feel fulfilled, happy, and valued. People increasingly feel they are losing control, that the exorbitant cost of living in this country has made accessing even the most basic necessities a real struggle. The constantly increasing cost of living, be it in housing, insurance, electricity bills, childcare costs, or public transport fares, add to that feeling of a loss of control over the quality of our lives. We want to wrest back that control and to provide the conditions for people to live a happy and a fulfilled life with a vibrant society within a strong economy.
As Social Democrats, we believe in the power of we. We believe in those of us in the room here tonight, those watching online, those sitting at home tonight, or those without a home, those lying on hospital trolleys or languishing on waiting lists, those worried about facing a flight to Liverpool on Monday morning just to seek basic health care, are determined that Ireland can be better, that we can work together. That we can work together towards meaningful change that has a direct impact on people's daily lives. Change which is underpinned by a social democratic vision. As Social Democrats, we aspire not just to basic survival. We recognise the collective potential that makes us capable of much, much more, that our ambition and political will get us there. Ask yourself, if you're 20 now, what kind of Ireland do you want to live in when you're 40? If you're 40 now, do you want an Ireland? What kind of an Ireland do you want to face in your retirement years? If you're 60 now, what is the Ireland you would want to take care of you in later years? What of our children, our grandchildren, and their children? What kind of Ireland do we believe that we should leave to them? Is it an Ireland of the so-called Republic of Opportunities, which is only available to those who can afford to access it? where inequality grows and continues to grow? Or is it a decent and fair Ireland, an Ireland where politicians ensure public affairs are managed in the best interests of all of the public and not just the privileged few?
Because Ireland and successive governments have for too long been held captive by powerful vested interests. We challenge those vested interests. We reject the politics of the Golden Circle. And as Social Democrats, our determination is to truly serve the public interest. But the type of Ireland you envisage 20 years from now won't happen by doing things the way that they've always been done.
The past 100 years have given us a passive politics which excludes rather than includes citizens. It's a politics of outsourcing responsibility for the delivery of public service. And it's a system that has enabled private interest to control and distort services that should first and foremost be the responsibility of the state. As Social Democrats, we recognise the value of the market. However, we also recognise that the market has a very specific function, which is about profit, and it's also about the survival of the fittest. It is not and should never be a substitute for responsibility when it comes to delivering public services such as health or education or childcare. The state's primary concern should always be to promote equal dignity for all of our citizens. That is not a consideration of the market, and that's why the state can't continue to abdicate responsibility for essential services to a private sector driven by a profit motive rather than human dignity. We've spoken out in defence of what we have termed the locked-out generation. We know that the cost of housing, either renting or buying, is increasingly outside of the reach of so many. As things stand, home ownership is something that will never be a reality for so many. Meanwhile, those people locked out of the prospect of home ownership also find it increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to afford ever-increasing rents that are demanded by a housing market that is left to the whim of private interests. Earlier this week in the Dáil, our renters' bill passed second stage, a significant achievement and one that we're very proud of. We see this as a vital first step in helping provide some security for those currently renting, and also helping to create a vibrant rental sector that becomes attractive and a secure housing option. Today, we follow on from that first step with our demand for the introduction of a renters' charter. Such a charter would provide protections for renters on a number of fronts, with protections that can work together to create a rental sector to provide security of tenure and affordability to renters. Our renters' charter contains a number of significant provisions, such as proper rent caps, proper regulation, a deposit protection scheme, protections for tenants in buy-to-let properties, a ban on bidding wars. A strong rental sector is a vital part of an overall housing strategy, where landlords and tenants have rights but also responsibilities in ensuring that attitudes and behaviour within the sector. This must be enhanced by strong government policy and effective enforcement which protects both landlord and tenant. Our Renters' Charter will achieve a rental market which works as successfully here as it does in other countries and other cities across the world.
And similarly, far too many of our young people are locked out of secure employment, decent conditions and fair pay. Increasing globalisation raises huge questions about the future of employment, which too often appears to be a race to the bottom. The driving down of standards in work through low pay, zero-hour contracts, bogus self-employment and the growth of the gig economy all pose major challenges for our society and for young workers in particular. Fair pay and conditions are vital if we are to achieve high productivity and quality employment, which is evident in other countries where social democracy is at the heart of their politics. It is time for a new deal for young workers. All workers should have a right to expect that hard work is properly rewarded, that work-life balance is possible, and that they can have a legitimate expectation that a decent job will allow you to live a decent life. So we call on government to legislate to end all precarious working arrangements, to introduce a living wage, to strengthen the right to collective bargaining, and to close the gender pay gap. And we must also end the blatant discrimination against our young entrants to our public service. It is shocking that we still have to call for equal pay for equal work. Is it any wonder that we have such shortages in teaching and nursing? How many times have you to ask yourself, why can't we get things right in this country? It doesn't have to be like this, you know. We are capable of governing ourselves, of designing and building institutions that work for rather than against people. With Sláintecare, we have shown what is possible. The kind of problems which so many people face in getting access to basic health care here in Ireland would simply not be tolerated in other countries, and they shouldn't be tolerated here. Access to good quality and equitable public health care is a cornerstone of any properly functioning fair society. But for too long, the Irish Health Service has been dominated by commercial, professional, and religious interests. These interests have very much worked against the public interest. We must change this so that access to healthcare is on the basis of health need rather than on ability to pay. And we also need to greatly expand our primary and community care services so that early care is available close to home in a way which achieves better health outcomes and much better value for money. One of the biggest challenges to the Irish Health Service at the moment is the recruitment and retention of staff at all levels. Sadly, far too many of our highly trained and dedicated health staff have gone abroad to health systems which function properly, which value them, and which do not operate the kind of health apartheid which is such a shameful feature of our system. That's why the Social Democrats took the initiative to seek all-party agreement on a plan for the kind of major reform needed to achieve a universal, high-quality public health system. Sláintecare is a fully costed 10-year strategy for such reform, and we call on government to stop the procrastination and to commit to the full and early implementation of Sláintecare as a matter of urgency.
A crucial step in changing direction to deliver a society where public goods really are public requires a complete volte-face from the current economic policy to a sustainable and vibrant economic system that works to deliver the type of society we aspire to live in. The next series of budgets are based on a significantly expanded fiscal space. The upcoming general election, whenever it's called, will pose a very clear question to Irish people. Do you want to repeat the mistakes of Bertie and co. and use money to buy votes, or do you want to invest in public services that you can really rely on? The political choice to be made is, do we collectively invest in better health services? Do we collectively decide to invest now in education, or better public transport or childcare? Or do we want cuts that raid the public purse? The price you pay for opting for tax cuts is the hospital trolley crisis, a housing crisis, traffic jams. They're all part of that price. But the great irony is that those can afford to will increasingly be forced to put their hands into their pockets to pay for services which in a functioning society would be and should be provided. It's time for a new social contract where we pay fair taxes, but we demand reliable and quality public services in return. That's the social democratic way.
And to suggest that our low corporate tax rate is the only attraction of Ireland does us all a serious disservice, while also depriving vital services of the income they need to survive and to thrive. Our industrial policy must involve improving investment in education and training, increasing capital investment in infrastructure, reducing the cost of living in areas like housing and energy, but also significantly cutting out the kind of red tape that's there for small and medium businesses. It cannot solely rely on a low corporate tax rate. Our 12.5% corporate tax rate must be our effective tax rate, not variations ranging down as low as 1% for those biggest global entities. Those global entities are, after all, the ones that benefit most from public investment, and so they must be required to pay their fair share. It is important for Ireland to bolster our own indigenous businesses. We need to encourage startups and entrepreneurship and foster innovation by supporting our hardworking and ambitious self-employed business people. Ireland can do much better in the area of innovation and support for small enterprises. We also need to reform our commercial courts in order to reduce costs and streamline access. A more efficient system will also benefit the wider society and will make Ireland a more attractive country for business investment. The December agreement on Brexit was a very good start, but it is only one step on what is an extremely challenging road ahead. Without solid action to follow through on the aspirations of that agreement, all industries face huge challenges, most significantly our agricultural sector and our many farm families. Brexit poses significant threats for Irish businesses, but it also opens up huge possibilities, and we must position ourselves to make the most of those potential opportunities.
Similarly, we're acutely aware of our responsibilities regarding climate and our environment. Irish households have some of the most and the highest energy bills in the Western world. We're also facing into fines of up to 600 million per year from 2021 onwards for the lack of action on our climate commitments. Indeed, we face the ridiculous prospect of the money that the government intends setting aside for the rainy day fund going entirely to the EU in climate fines. We need to spend now on the capital side in order to save later. This is essential to avoid climate change and climate fines. The straitjacket of the fiscal rules is preventing us from achieving a more sustainable economic and ecological future. We need to robustly challenge those rules, and we need to break them when it makes sense to do so.
Social Democrats are proposing the implementation of a new national retrofit scheme for households and for small businesses. This must happen as a matter of priority. The current sustainable energy grant system is good, but it could be so much better. It relies on people having money up front to fund the retrofitting of their homes, money which most people simply do not have. The Social Democrats are calling for a new grant system where the SEAI would partner with energy companies in order that people can upgrade their homes, get a grant for the work, and fund the balance through the savings on their energy bills. All energy providers should be required to facilitate this new scheme. This pay-as-you-go system would require no upfront payment from householders and would mean that tens of thousands of households currently excluded from the grant system could avail of the scheme. This makes perfect sense. It would upgrade our housing stock. It would cut the cost of heating for families, and it would be good for our environment.
It's easy to use economic indicators to claim success, but many people in this room or across Ireland sit here and think, oh great, our GDP is X percent, you know? They don't, because the reality is it's not something that people consider central to their lives. So how do we measure success? If you don't measure something, then it doesn't get done. If we solely rely on GDP or other such indicators, then we accept the trolley crisis, we accept the housing crisis, we accept child poverty, and we accept grossly substandard disability and mental health services. Well, the Social Democrats don't accept those things. The success of Irish society and citizens is far more than about our GDP. Ask people in Denmark or Norway or Finland what makes them consistently rank highest when it comes to happiness with their lives. They won't say anything about GDP, but they will tell you about their good working conditions. A childcare system which allows them to access the workplace on their own terms. A health service which serves their needs no matter what their income is. And a housing system which makes it possible for everyone to access the housing model that best suits their needs. These factors make for a successful society. And you know what? A successful society makes for a good economy.
And people from Nordic countries will also tell you that they have confidence in their political and public institutions. Can we honestly say that? Corruption and malpractice have for too long been pervasive in Irish political and public life. That is why we continue to call for the establishment of an independent anti-corruption agency. If oversight and regulation of our institutions is to be meaningful, then it must be adequately resourced and staffed, and it must be independent of government. In other words, it must have real teeth. Nowhere is this truer than in relation to policing. Since the 1960s, we've had tribunal after inquiry after tribunal, and all pointed to the need for root and branch reform of the operation of the Gardaí, the need for greater oversight, and the need for a far greater level of accountability. Critically, though, there were few, if any, consequences for officers who brought the force into disrepute, nor, it seems, were there any lessons learned. And so here we are again, after the appalling treatment of whistleblowers, the resignation of 2 Garda commissioners, 2 Secretaries General from the Department of Justice, and 2 Ministers for Justice. And still, we do not have an effective means of dealing with complaints from the public, nor from Gardaí themselves. That is why the Social Democrats fully support the call from GSOC to properly resource it, to reform its important oversight role by strengthening its powers and by giving it independence from the Department of Justice. We urgently need this reform so that our police force can concentrate on their primary role, which is to uphold the rule of law and to keep our communities safe. An organisation based on the principles of transparency, public service and accountability is what we need. We need a Garda Síochána that truly prioritises and values community policing. Gardaí whose presence is viewed as a welcome and reassuring one in every city, town and village of this country. Gardaí who are proactive and deliver results on local issues, whether that's drug dealing, antisocial activity or the problem of rural crime.
We also need to shine a light on our other public institutions, including government itself. Secret government, public information that the public can't access, blanket confidentiality, those feed into costly decisions, some of which could have been avoided if more people knew about them sooner. Take the night of the bank guarantee. €1 billion decisions that will impact on all of our lives for decades to come were made that night, yet not a single note exists to explain who made those decisions or why those decisions were made. That's why we'll introduce a bill to make sure that the principles of open government are woven into our decision making. Our forthcoming record-keeping bill, based on successful models in Scotland and New Zealand, will force officials and ministers to create and maintain the permanent records that are essential for accountability and will ensure that there are real consequences for wrongdoing and for incompetence.
That Ireland you picture 20 years from now starts with the decisions that we make today. It doesn't just happen. It requires work, a roadmap, and the will to get us there. We have that will. Together as a party, we're designing the roadmap, and we are enthusiastically working on it. The optimism, ability, and inherent fairness and decency which makes Ireland so fantastic at a community level, can be embedded into our political system. We need to replace the same old with a new approach towards creating an Ireland which is based on the principles of equality, dignity, and honesty. We are really proud of the calibre of people who are signing up to this party. And it reassures us of the appetite and the desire to work towards building a better country and a fairer future. To those of you in the hall tonight, and to the rest of our members and supporters and friends throughout the country, we know that as a party, we are capable, determined, ambitious, and driven by a vision that is focused on solutions. And as we prepare for the next general election, we know that the Irish people will be faced with a decision on the future of our country and the future direction of our country. We want them to make that decision with a credible and real alternative on their ballot paper. We want to give them that choice. So let us, together, be that real alternative. Thank you very much, everybody.